Today's video, we're going to be checking out the Mattel Justice League action. This is Green Arrow. Now you know, and I know, before we have a look at the figure, we're going to obviously need to figure out how tall this guy stands. So we'll grab the tape measure. This figure is about 4.5 inches in height. For some other size comparisons, we'll put in some previously looked at Justice League action figures. Here's Blue Beetle, and here is the Flash. Green Arrow is about the same height as the Flash. He seems like he's a little bit taller than Blue Beetle. He gets himself a couple of accessories, one of which being a bow. And you're probably wondering why there's this silver stud, this pin going through it. It's because the bow can also open up as a propeller. More on that in a second. But one thing about the bow is because it hinges and it hinges open, it makes the handle a lot thicker, and therefore it's a little bit more trickier to get him to hold it. Still manages to do so. I mean, it doesn't really look as good as a bow because it's got this big, very noticeable middle section to it that does add for a little extra size. He does also come with an arrow. Now, I tried at the beginning of this review to make it as if he's actually firing off his bow and arrow. It's not as successful because his arrow is the size of a baseball bat. And because the arrow doesn't have strings, it looks a little on the silly side. What you can also do, too, is he comes with his quiver. And the quiver plugs just into his back like so. And you notice there's already two sculpted in arrows and a hole in the middle for this very, very thick arrow. And it can fit just in between like so. Doesn't look as the same really as the other arrows, but because he's got many different trick arrows, you can kind of justify why it looks specifically like that. You can also, because it's using the same peg, you also put this into his hand like so, and he's got kind of like a 3-arrow kind of shooting, whatever you want to call it. Or what you can also do too is take the backpack and keep the arrow intact and flip it the other way around. Then go ahead and take the bow and hinge it open again. And you can attach it, not attach it by the larger hole, but attach it by the smaller hole. And that just plugs into place up at the top there. And instantly, Green Arrow's got himself kind of like a makeshift helicopter backpack. Would it be something that he would wear? Not necessarily, but at the very least, it's doing something interesting, making use of a bow. Even though I don't really like the fact it's got the middle section right here, at the very least, though, at least you're getting two purposes out of one bow. Take these off, put those to the side. Oh, and also, too, these are Power Connects. I'm using my quote hands because you can also mix and match these with other Justice League action figures. More on that later. So let's have a look at Green Arrow. Well, he's not a bad figure, but one of the big problems I have is the figure's head looks squished. It looked like they put his hood on and then vacuum formed it. You know when you remember the advertisements for those vacuum sealers? You could seal sandwiches and steaks before you put them in the freezer. Looks like somebody vacuum formed his hood over top of his head. It actually looks more like you wore like a jogging outfit or a fit training outfit, the hood with the drawstring. Looks like he's tightened that. The hood should be a much more relaxed fit around his head and ultimately makes his head look very squished. You can also see his big bulbous head now peeking out. Just makes his head look very, very much a squished head. The head sculpt isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but I think otherwise the hood really ruins it for him. Should have been a lot bigger. The rest of his body is pretty consistent with how it appears in the cartoon, a mixture of dark greens and light greens. looking at the figure when I got him out of packaging, for one split second, a very small second, I thought he had no posability in his legs, and I thought, oh no, oh no, oh no. I thought they actually had removed the articulation, but that not be the case. They are still there. He still has the full posability. Paint's otherwise pretty clean on this guy. Don't really have any issues other than the big branding stamp that they always put on the back of these figures. But at least it's acceptable. It's small enough. You're not going to really notice it too much. I do like this figure, though. The only thing I could really say as a nitpick to this particular guy is the fact that his hood. That's the only thing I would probably change on this particular figure rendition of Justice League Action Green Arrow. Let's run through his posability. His head rotates all the way around. Technically as well, he's got the hinge up and down. Doesn't move as freely, though, as his head rotating all the way around. Arms hinge outwards to about there. Can't really hinge it any further than that. You can see that the shoulder starts butting itself up against the torso. Kind of eliminates the possibility of doing anything more than that. Arm rotates still. That's not been forfeited. Bend at the elbow. You can also rotate the forearm. And nothing, by the way, in the hand. The hand is just simply sculpted into his glove. He's got a waist swivel. Somebody, I think, once mentioned in a video that they don't see me do nearly enough posability turns. In other words, for example, if his torso rotates, I guess I just did that. So just want to, for that individual, I don't know who it was. There, see? He has a full rotation in the waist. Legs split out. Full split. You can get Van Damme on this guy. Forward and back on the legs. Bend at the knee. Rotation on the leg. Sorry. There you go, gentlemen. Rotate all the way around on the legs. And he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, but I just want to show you this. Look how small these peg holes are. These are very specific to this character because that's an awfully small peg. If he's not going to come with a display stand, why they couldn't have simply made it a much larger peg to accommodate standard display stands. He doesn't, and I don't know. Oh, for the record, by the way, I tried using a Funko vinyl, those vinyl pieces that I like so much. I tried using one of those stands that have one of the smallest pegs that I can find on a display stand. Still doesn't fit. So they put small pegs on a figure and then don't take the liberty of including the stands. For shame. Not a bad looking figure. I like how he translated well to plastic, although I do have to admit the hood seems awfully tight. That's going to cut off circulation. Other than that, I like the interchangeable options. I'm trying to kind of think as a kid here for a second. Nice interchangeable options for his weapons. I like that you can use the bow also dual purpose as a propeller on the top of a helicopter backpack. It's not something that Green Arrow would normally have used, but I get the fact that they're trying to find cool new ways to mix and match and find different options for weapons. So, it's not too bad. It's not one of my favorites of the Justice League action figures. It's definitely not one of the worst, though. Other than just the hood, I think that's a pretty good looking figure of Green Arrow. Just as a side note, though, what's the deal? Like Justice League Action, Mattel, we're getting all these heroes. We've got very little in the way of villains. I think the only villains that we've gotten so far are Lex Luthor and Joker. I get the fact that kids love heroes, but kids love villains too. Maybe you may want to consider doing some more villains in this particular line. Because after all, the heroes will just ultimately have to be hanging out places like pubs and outside of convenience stores, just kind of talking about stuff. They're not really going to be able to fight villains because, well, the only two villains you've released are already behind bars. Just FYI. Today, though, we were having a look at the Mattel Justice League Action. This was a very constricted, probably cutting off circulation, Green Arrow. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Don't let a tight hood prevent you from missing out. Don't prevent you from catching new videos that are coming up onto this channel. If you guys also want to go back and have a look at some of my Justice League action reviews, there's a playlist, if you could believe it, specifically called Justice League Action, where you can go back and have a look at all the other figures that I've done on this channel. Thanks for watching as you always do, guys. I'll see you next time.